We start this week's news roundup with Diablo 4 making changes based on the beta feedback that happened a little while ago, with Blizzard coming out with changes to the classes, dungeons, UIs, and more. Now, there has been some controversial things that they kept, such as the cost to respec is now final and won't be changed, although they just keep repeating that it won't be prohibitively expensive. Personally, I don't know why you need to have a cost on respecking at all, but here we go, this is Blizzard after all. Some things they have changed though is lower the amount of backtracking in various different dungeons, which is basically just a time sink and isn't fun, as well as increasing the likelihood of events happening by 6 times, from 10% to 60%, and have apparently made changes to streamline and vary the experience of completing objectives, which I'm assuming means you're constantly making progress towards the end of the dungeon rather than having to go back on yourself. But at the same time, you won't be able to find the sort of meta dungeon that gives you the most experience in the fastest time all of the time. As if they're varying the experience, then you'll never know which is actually the most optimal. We're also getting rather obvious class rebalances, with many legendary powers being made more effective. All classes now have skills that can remove crowd control, as well as doubling the time it takes for stun and freeze to make elite mobs unstoppable. Now, the class changes, at least for me, are more controversial. What they've essentially done is taken all of the fun characters and made them less fun, and then made the non-fun characters slightly more fun, so everything's now in this middle ground of, let's see how that plays on release. I had a lot of fun with Sorcerer and Necromancer, and those are the two which are getting massively nerfed. And with them being fun simply because they were so powerful, I'm not sure if these balance changes will have just ended up nerfing fun overall in the game. Either way, Barbarian's got a buff, which was desperately needed. For some reason, he takes more damage, but in return, they've buffed Whirlwind and Double Swing. Druids have also been buffed with their companions' damage being increased, reducing their ultimate skills cooldowns. Rogues, of all things, have been buffed, which I didn't play one, but I had heard that they were very good characters as it is. But apparently they've had their subterfuge skills increased, as well as several of their passives, although their imbuement skills do have longer cooldowns. Then to the next two, the Necromancer takes a massive nerf bat. Apparently summon minions now die more easily, which was one of the complaints of the beta, that they died all the time and so were entirely pointless. And Corpse Explosion, everyone's favourite skill, has had its damage reduced as well. Is that fair? Probably. Does it nerf fun? Yes. But in return, they have apparently buffed many Book of the Dead bonuses, and the brightness of skeletal warriors and mages have been reduced, because everybody cares about that. Then we get to Sorcerer, the class I was going to play at launch. Charge Bolt now deals more damage and takes less mana, but Chain Lightning's damage has been reduced, especially its effectiveness against bosses. Now, the thing with Sorcerer was I kind of piled AoE on top of myself, and so that's not necessarily the end of the world, it'll just be a bit lower damage. But if they've already got Sorcerer in their targets, I dread to think what else they're going to nerf about them. Now, apparently they have buffed Incinerate's enchantment bonus by reducing its cooldown. Firewalls will now spawn underneath enemies more frequently, and Meteor's enchantment bonus is more likely to score a lucky hit. So there are buffs and nerfs overall. I would just prefer if those nerfs were aimed somewhere where I didn't use them. And if anyone's like, you just want an overpowered character, yes I do. Now, on top of this, there are UI changes, quality of life, and bug fixes, as well as changes to some of the bosses, like the Butcher, who apparently is even harder in tiers 3 and 4. And all of this will be followed up with a developer livestream about Diablo 4 endgame offerings, including the changes that have been made, and that will come on the 20th of April on Thursday. In other news, we did find out that their Battle Pass will take about 80 hours to complete, although they did have to clarify when they spoke about seasonal story content. It isn't actually a new campaign, it's essentially smaller quests that are just meant to demonstrate to you new mechanics for that season, and these quests will be available for everybody, whether you've bought the Battle Pass or not. We also got information about Diablo 4's PvP, how Fields of Hatred aren't designed to be fair. Essentially, there is a sort of matchmaking available, where if you're a top-ranked player, you're not going to go against somebody who's just joined the game, but it is a fairly loose matchmaker, and she's specifically talking about people getting ganked when they're doing bosses and things. She also says that the team aren't actually trying to balance PvP in particular, and is more just focused around if you're really powerful, then you're going to be fighting powerful enemies. But all of those enemies may not actually be balanced against you. Although if the idea of PvP getting involved in your boss fights isn't your thing, then this is opt-in, and so you can just turn it all off if that's not what you want. As well as the rewards that are available in this PvP are going to be entirely cosmetic, so it's not like you'll be losing out on anything actually vital or important in the game. Next up, as Dark and Darker went through legal battles with Nexon accusing them of copyright infringement and so sending a DMCA takedown to Steam, they did still want to do their April playtest, which had been previously arranged. The thing was, if it's not on Steam, how do you distribute the game? And so they actually went out and started telling the player base to just torrent the download, warning that the login screen may be a bit confusing. Now, the devs did say they were going old school in this one, but there was a problem, and that apparently a lot of people no longer even know what a torrent is, let alone know how to use them. So while the developers tweeted a magnet link and warned that you shouldn't use any unofficial source, it did lead to their Discord getting absolutely spammed with people that have never even used torrents before, having no idea what to do with the link that they just received. All in all, problems stacked on top of problems, and definitely not the best way to start a playtest that will already be difficult enough to get people involved in, because it's not on Steam and a lot of people just use Steam nowadays. This also got worse in a rather predictable manner when the torrent itself got DMCA'd and copyright claimed. This meant that the dev's own link, which they'd said don't use anything else, now is taken down. And then comes with even more problems, because when they wanted to hotfix the beta, they had to put out a different torrent link for people to start downloading. And then their tweets with the links to download the game also got DMCA'd off Twitter itself. So despite Iron Mace saying that these claims are completely bogus right from the start, the drama when it comes to Dark and Darker just keeps getting worse, as every time they find a new workaround, they just get DMCA'd there themselves, and the players are the ones suffering because they really want to play this game and can never get into it. And especially as Nexon already doesn't have the best reputation among gamers, this whole debacle does seem to be damaging their reputation, because no matter what actually the legal consequences are, even if Nexon does have a claim, all you're doing is stopping gamers playing what they want, and it's your name that keeps coming up as the one stopping them. Whether it's fair or not to blame Nexon for this is almost irrelevant, because they're still the ones receiving the bad PR because of it. As Dark and Darker is left in a right mess of just everybody trying to play it, but with all the links changing, as well as struggling with torrents in the first place, half the people that want to get in don't even understand what they should be doing to get in, and as it keeps changing, as all the links keep changing, nobody knows what's safe and what isn't to download. So with the official link in trouble, you've now got fans themselves trying to seed it for other people so that they can get the game, which is only as helpful up to the point where a lot of people don't even know what the word seeding means. And apparently the devs are in no position to help people around any of this, because Discord doesn't even allow torrent links in the first place, which is presumably why they posted it on Twitter, which then got taken down. All in all, I was pretty amazed when I found out they were continuing with the playtest in the first place after they'd been taken down from the stores. I never actually thought they'd be using torrents to distribute their game. There have been games that I've played before that distribute themselves peer-to-peer, but they always use their own client that you downloaded as a source and then downloaded the game from other people from there. It makes it a lot easier for the players involved. This seemed like a right mess. And while you only have to look on Twitch to see that a lot of people have got through and are playing it perfectly fine, I think you do have to question any kind of impact to your reputation that this might have. And it just comes down to a question of, will Dark and Darker get blamed for this, or will the pressure go on to Nexon themselves to stop it? As no matter who's legally in the right, the question comes down to, do the players actually care? And I don't think that players really should have to consider the legal ramifications of gaming behind the scenes in the first place. But either way, I think this is going to be an interesting one to follow. Not just to see how the actual legal battle itself turns out, but who ends up winning the PR battle, because either Dark and Darker will get the support as sort of the little underdog fighting against the company, or it could end up with the player base turning on them if it turns out that the original Nexon complaints are actually accurate. We'll have to wait and see, but it's a situation I'm definitely going to be following. Next up, all is not right at home when it comes to Bungie, as they are taking action at a community summit after there was Season 21 leaks, saying when that trust is betrayed, it hurts, and nobody wants to harm the feelings of a multi-millionaire corporation. Now, what happened is it looks like somebody leaked the slides from an internal presentation, and due to this, Bungie are taking actions to reinforce our policies and looking to penalize the person that leaked it with the penalties that they signed in their NDA. And the Destiny team really laid this on thick. So the community and interaction engagement is central to Bungie. For years, we've invited creators and members of the community to these confidential summits. It's a beloved part of the process, but relies on trust. Breaches of this trust could result in our inability to hold more summits, and that these breaches of trust hurt. I don't think people realize how attached we are to the game. It's hard when you genuinely care, and please don't abuse that trust. I have to say, after all of the positions that Destiny 2 has taken on stuff, I'm surprised they even had the gall to come out with a message like that. Somebody leaks some slides and to you it's the end of the world. Guilt and shame coming from a corporation is a particularly unusual experience, but it's definitely not one that they are new to trying on their customers. So while obviously I agree that if you sign a legally binding agreement, you should definitely respect it, it doesn't mean that I sympathize with Bungie trying to guilt-trip their audience over it. Now, one good thing that Destiny 2 did was start banning Cronus cheaters, saying that the community has grown increasingly frustrated with a form of cheating that uses third-party peripherals with the intent to manipulate the game client, which is an extremely overcomplicated way of going, yeah, they hack and can get extra aim assist. Now, I did find it interesting that they said our community has grown increasingly frustrated, and then they did something about it, rather than just deciding to do this off their own backs. It really is something that you should have done when they first came on the market. But apparently no. Only when the community reaches a certain threshold of anger are they actually even bothered to attempt to do something. Then we have Suicide Squad The Justice League has now been delayed till 2nd of February 24, with the developers saying we've made the tough but necessary decision to take the time needed to work on getting the game to the best quality, and we will be sharing more news in the months ahead. And a lot of importance seems to be put on that phrase, the best quality experience, because we did get news about the game before in February's State of Play, which received overwhelmingly negative feedback, and yet that's not why it's actually getting delayed, and they've been very specific about that. This is about polish, not fixing or changing the game. So don't expect the entire game to switch up into a different type of game or with a new monetization model. There just isn't enough time in this length of a delay. One thing they won't be doing is giving major gameplay changes, because coming from Jason Schreier, 9 months is not enough to completely change the nature of a game. The team itself has already been told that it's polish and not related to the gameplay showcase, and it could actually be a load of other factors which are affecting the release of the game, none of which seem to be the players actually not liking it, despite that being what you would assume would actually take priority. Then we have Sony coming out and deciding just to insult their competitors, but not even to their face, just in the patents. This doesn't even seem to be for marketing purposes, it just seems to be something they enjoy doing in their spare time. Apparently, for years, Sony's patents have been disparaging Microsoft and Nintendo as inferior manufacturers, and they've been doing it for over a decade, as their patents keep including references to a home entertainment system of a different, albeit inferior manufacturer. So maybe all their snide little comments about the Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard are just standard for Sony. This is how they do business, as this different, albeit inferior manufacturer has actually been found in 12 patents over the last decade. And considering this was done in patent filings, it's something their customers will basically never see unless somebody else references it to them. So the only people that are ever really going to see it would be the patent office, and maybe Microsoft and Nintendo looking up patents to see what they can learn. It does seem to be a rather sneaky way to insult your competitors trying to work out what you're doing, and personally, I just kind of admire the trolling nature of all of it. It's like, yeah, we're not doing this for any monetary goal or for marketing purposes. This is just for fun. But for now, that's all from me. If you like the video, press like, subscribe for more videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.